Okay. Okay, so can you hear okay at the back there? Is okay? Doesn't sound louder. A bit louder. It is a bit weak. Best. Have we got a volume on this? It's right. We've tried before and it's not always adjustable. There's some magic touch somewhere with an exact coordination of put an elbow on one button and another here and a foot on this one and then turn it, you can actually change it. But we haven't figured out the magic formula. I can speak up anyway.
That's the solution.
You don't need a microphone.
No, I'm standing.
Okay, good. This evening we have half an hour group meditation, then we have some Dhamma talk, little bit of time for discussion, and by 8 o'clock we will finish. So that's the plan for this evening. No joy. Okay. So is anyone here never done meditation before? Anyone new to meditation? Or fairly new to meditation? Okay. One or two. So I'll give a few basic instructions to get started. And for those of you who have your own meditation system or practice, feel free to carry on with that practice. So settle yourself into a comfortable position. By object, we mean you put your attention onto that sensation and make the resolution to keep attention there. A few things will happen. Sometimes you can feel a little panic as the ego tries to take control of the breathing. Just let the body breathe naturally by itself. You don't need to control it. Sometimes you wonder, well, exactly where do I put my attention? It doesn't matter too much. You can follow the sensation of the breath running up and down just in front of the spine. Or you can hold attention stationary in the middle of the body and feel the breath running past. Or you may just have the general notion, here is the breath. The exact way that you put attention on there is not important. Just be aware that all good meditation requires mindfulness of body. So the breath is counted as physical body. Very quickly, once you put your attention onto the breathing, the mind will feel in, out, got it, and will wander off to think about other things. This is your attention wandering away from the meditation object. When you note that your attention has wandered off from the object, you stop whatever it is you were thinking about, whatever it is that took your attention away, and then you bring your attention back to the meditation object. Note that your attention might wander away several times a second. It may feel almost impossible to fix the mind onto the meditation object. But that is our task. 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times. Re-establish mindful awareness on the meditation object. Note that the breathing is a neutral sensation. It's not pleasant or attractive. It's not unpleasant or repulsive. 99% of your life is spent focusing on things that are attractive, things that catch your attention, pleasant or unpleasant. The meditator trains themselves to be content with the neutral sensation object. Here it is more peaceful, here it is more balanced. Keep returning your attention over and over to the meditation. Any thoughts, dreams, desires, aspirations, you can let them go. Think about those things later. Your ability to just sit for 30 minutes, knowing yourself, feeling yourself, without the mind wandering. This is a beautiful quality to have. It will open up a space for consciousness to rest, a home place for attention to return to, open up room for wisdom, insight, balance, harmony. Will open up a space for the introduction of beautiful qualities such as loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, equanimity, or all the other good qualities that we know. So be patient with your meditation. This is a lifelong task, a lifelong aspiration. For those who are experienced with meditation, just note your attention goes to one thing at a time. Flits to the sound of the air conditioner, flits to the aching in your knee, flits to wondering what's for dinner, flits to visas and businesses and holidays and families and relationships. One thing at a time. Whatever it is that comes into attention, don't give attention to the signs and features of that perception. Allow that sense of self-presence, intensification of the sense of self or presence, sense of stability that the mind does not wander out to any perceptions. Should you feel luminous, this is the right experience that will start to arise when the mind doesn't go out to any object. You may feel the body become larger. You may get a sense of moving into a mystic stream. It should appear as familiar, empowering, bright. Characterized by awareness that's not moving away from its home base. Characterized by purification of consciousness. Characterized by experiencing the body in a pleasant sensation. These are all signposts that the mind is stepping out of delusion and entering into the path. So we'll sit together for another 10 minutes or so. So for the final few minutes of the meditation, turn your attention to the idea of loving kindness, universal well-wishing, unconditional love. Let that Spirit, the Holy Ghost, pass through all of us here, conjuring up the thought, feeling and perception, universal loving kindness, a genuine wish, may all beings be happy, may all beings be peaceful, may all beings be free from suffering. Any way that you can arouse this thought, feeling and perception is okay. We are exchanging the neutral meditation object with this particular perception and feeling and consciousness. If it's difficult to arouse, then just have the intention. Make the wish for yourself. May I be happy, peaceful, free from suffering. We take that metta, loving kindness of the whole group here this evening and dedicate it to those who have passed away. Those friends and family, remember their names, remember their face. Offer them this beautiful metta, loving kindness. Offer them the merit of the whole group here. All of us, myself included, dedicating ourselves to this beautiful quality. So that group merit, punya, brightening. Remember this feeling and bring into mind those people who passed away, loved or cherished. Sabbe buddha balapatta pachekanancha ihang balang arahantanancha te jena rakang mandami sabhaso sabbabuddha nubhavena sattha soti bhagwantu te Sabbe buddha balapatta pachekanancha ihang balang arahantanancha te jena rakang mandami sabhaso Sabba Dhamma nubhavena sattha soti bhagwantu te Sabbe buddha balapatta pachekanancha yang balang arahanta nancha te jena rakang bandami sabhaso Sabba sangha nubhavena sattha soti bhagwantu te. trying to turn the fan noise down, but the machines are still on. Okay, so welcome everyone. Well, there's people I know, some people I don't know. This evening will be the last time for a while. I'm going to be off on retreat, then I'm going to attempt to go to Germany for 3 months, depending on visa. I should get 3 months without a visa, and then longer if I can. So I won't be seeing you for a while in Bangkok. I set this up because I was losing my visa a couple of months ago, so I had to desperately write around the world. I need to go somewhere. So I got an invite for this place. And then I got my visa, so I can't write back and say, yeah, no thanks, I'm good. So I will be off for a few months. Germany. I've never been before, but I hear they have very good bread. So I'm in. I can't get good bread in Bangkok. Well, at least some of you guys can. Certainly nowhere that I go can you get good bread. So, because this is the last time for a while, I wanted to give you hardcore Dhamma, the unadulterated, unfiltered, original teaching, the way that it was originally given. And it may be a little bamboozling, especially for some people who haven't done meditation before or are new. There may be some concepts and ideas that I'm just going to have to assume people know about, because I can't explain every single thing as I go through. So this was the entire path according to Sakyamuni Buddha 2,500 years ago. He discovered a thing which he then began to teach. He'd been searching for what he called the amata, the deathless. Doesn't mean that the body won't die, but it means that there is some core, if you like, or some essence that is doesn't arise and cease. This is technical definition. So he'd set out in search of this amata, having learned about it in northern India at the time. Especially the Brahmanic tradition had a teaching that there is this deathless thing that can be attained to, but nobody knew what it was or how to get to it. Also in India at the time was the Samana tradition, which came from the Indus Valley civilization of that era. And they had a tradition of monks who would leave the city and go and live in the forest, and usually trying to get supernormal powers offered by emulating animals or doing ascetic practices. So two different traditions. One is the tradition of practice, the other is the tradition of this attainment that can be made. So the Buddha tried both of these paths and found that they didn't work. He couldn't find this amata, the deathless. He'd done all the ascetic practices and he found they just created suffering. So he goes off, famously sits underneath the Bodhi tree and makes the determination that I'm going to sit here until I have discovered the amata or die in the process. Famously, may my bones turn to dust, may my blood dry up, but I will not move from this spot until I have attained enlightenment. Many of us foolish people, when we are young monks, we try and do the same thing. Come and sit in a hall or on a meditation retreat. I'm not going to move, I'm going to attain enlightenment. I have the determination of a Buddha. Whatever it comes, I'm going to sit here and my blood can turn to dust. And you get an hour in and then you get 2 hours in and you think, I really need a wee. So it's harder than one thinks. So then he finds this amata, he attains to the deathless, and what he says is, according to the text, the original text, he says, for this generation caught in desires and longing and worldly concerns, it is too hard for them to understand this thing that is very subtle and hard to see, namely, the stilling of all intention. Now, the word intention is sankhara. There's a very big debate on what this word actually means. But in general it means a movement of the mind. One of the definitions is Buddhism has a lot of lists of things. So that's how we remember the teachings. But there are three movements of mind. The movement of action of body, of action of speech, or action of mind. Usually Western civilization has body and mind, but Buddhism has action of body, action of speech, action of mind. So this is the movement to act or interact with the world around us, the movement of consciousness to go out and start to interact with, understand, manipulate the world around us in order to eat, survive, have friends, go to Taylor Swift concerts, free tickets. Politicians in England just got into trouble for receiving free tickets to go and see Taylor Swift, saying this is corruption. They haven't got the time. So that movement to interact or to move outwards into the world is a natural movement of any living creature. But the Buddha said, in order to attain to this enlightenment, this movement out, this sankhara, has to stop. So what exactly does that mean? And what exactly is attained to if you do it? He gave 6 main words in the initial teaching. I told you I'm giving you the original text. Chakku Garani, this is his description of enlightenment. Chakku Garani, eye open. This is eye as in to see, not as in to understand. There are other words in the Pali that mean seeing, but also mean understanding, like we have in English, right? When you have an argument with someone and you say, I see, means that you understand what they are saying. Does not mean you agree with them. It's important that. I do this with many people, like, oh, I see, and then they think, no, I've won the argument. No, I don't agree with you, I just... Chakku Garani, it is seen with the eye. This is seen directly, not with the understanding. Understanding was the word panya, wisdom. Chakku Garani, Jnana Garani. Jnana is knowing, same root as the English word to know. It's actually a ny sound, which is why the English has a K on the front of the word. It comes from the Sanskrit and was a different N to the regular N that we have in English. It's another route to go down for conversation. Jnana Garani, seeing and knowing. Knowing means knowing directly, not wisdom, which is knowing characteristics or understanding, but an actual specific knowledge. For example, I know that Justin Trudeau will not be Prime Minister of Canada next week. He's going to resign. You heard it here first. He will. He'll be gone by next week. At least according to the Telegraph. That's knowledge. Wisdom is knowing that he's going to be replaced by some other meaningless politician that won't improve anything. That's wisdom. Difference between knowledge and wisdom. Another difference between knowledge and wisdom, I read somewhere, probably on Facebook. Knowledge is knowing that a tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is knowing not to put it in your fruit salad, something like that. Chakugarani, seeing, Jnanagarani, knowing, Upasamaya, peace arose. The word upa means like a superlative or a higher peace arose. Abhinyaya, the power gathers in the mind. So abhinyaya is power of mind, power of psychic. It's often called psychic power. Sambodhaya, awakening. Nibbanaya, enlightenment. So he gave 6 words. Buddha often would give multiple words for the same thing, so that you don't get hooked on the word, and you see the principle of the word. So, as he taught through his ministry, the teachings settled onto a couple of strands, which are recorded in what we call the suttas. And these suttas are texts that were recited and have been recited for 2,500 years. Even by cultures, even as Buddhism spread around the world and went to different cultures over the last 2,000 years, often these teachings actually retain the exact same formulas, even going through multiple languages. So we can find the same texts in the Chinese, they're called the Agama, and match them up to the Pali, which came from Sri Lanka. These texts have carried on the exact same teachings as they spread around the world. I say this because there's a lot of other Buddhism that was much later teachings, which may or may not help, but often went off on divergent paths, especially in the 20th century, especially when America got hold of Dhamma, started to go off in some interesting directions. So the way that he taught was, if one sits and watches what actually happens, this word metta bhutan means knowing what is actually happening. What is actually happening as you sit and watch it, in the present moment, in consciousness, what actually happens, not what you think happens, is your attention will go to one thing. When your attention lands on that thing, it assesses the signs, what we call technical language, the signs and features of that thing. So right now, I always have various examples that I can give, but right now the thing that I'm really thinking about is aniseed balls. My friends here just brought me some aniseed balls from England, and I don't want to talk to you now. I want to go back in my room and eat my aniseed balls. So I put my mind onto aniseed balls. It comes into my attention. 5 seconds ago it was not in my attention. Now my attention has landed like a spotlight, or a flashlight, dark blue, will land on one thing, one thing, one thing. My attention has landed on my aniseed balls. Now, aniseed balls, I like it. When your attention lands on something, you get liking or disliking all around, to draw you in or push you away. As it lands on that thing, so that thing comes up into my consciousness and I think about it. Now if I go into that story, this is going into what's called Maya, or delusion. It means I've gone into the conceptual world. And in this conceptual world there is me, and there is Scott and Mary here who brought me my aniseed balls all the way from England. There is, where can I get them in the future? Can I order them online? Will they send them from England if I order them? Does England have Lazada? I'm now in the story, right? And in this story is a set of concepts, and I can maneuver those concepts around. This is the world of delusion, or illusion, or conceptual universe. The technical term is Maya. Maya was actually a more Mahayana term than Theravada. It's a very useful word. Now Maya is described as unreal or delusion. However, the conceptual world is still real in its own terms. And my example for that is the Golden Gate Bridge. You've all heard of the Golden Gate Bridge, I presume. In Britain it's the Forth Bridge, but that arises as a concept in your mind. However, it doesn't mean, just because that's delusion, it doesn't mean the Golden Gate Bridge doesn't exist. It does exist. And if you're an engineer, you need to know how thick the steel is, when it's been repainted, the repair, maintenance that has to be done on it, and all the other things connected with it. These are real things. So when we talk about delusion, we're not saying that those things aren't real. What we're saying is, as a meditator right now, the Golden Gate Bridge has just come into my attention. What's really happening is that is a thought that's come up. My attention has landed on it for whatever reason, and now I've been drawn into the story and the conceptual world around the Golden Gate Bridge. Now, most of you are not interested in the Golden Gate Bridge, but as things come into your attention, each thing will have a certain lure or attraction. Buddha used many words for this. Attachment, lure, called delighting in. Many words to describe that the thing that's come into your attention has an attraction that will draw your attention into that story. If I say Golden Gate Bridge, most people comes into your attention, you don't care, it's going to disappear from your attention very quickly. But if I say something that you care about, your family, dinner, food will usually get people. You can spend an enormous amount of time thinking about food, especially if you're a monk and you eat only once a day. You want to make sure you get a good hit on that once a day. I'll tell you some funny stories about that. So the thing that comes into your attention has a lure or an attraction that will draw your mind in. You're paying attention to the signs and features of that thing, and now you're in delusion or in maya, because you're manipulating those concepts around. Where can I get bread? I don't know quite how much to say. I was just in Hua Hin with some friends and they got this really good bread, but I don't know if she's watching on YouTube. She doesn't know how to cut bread. And she'd all cut it in big wedges. And then the wedges would cut kind of thin and then it would curve out and you get a sharp edge. And then you put it in the toaster and that sharp edge turned into a razor. And I cut the underside of my tongue. So talking to you now, I'm hoping I'm clear, but in my mind I'm like, because I have this cut underneath my tongue. So I can get drawn into the story about bread, how to cut bread, not to how I should have cut this razor edge off the toast, and because I care about it. Food is a big one that catches people. Football, sports, rugby, boxing, mixed martial arts, visa application processes. All this stuff, what it is for you that catches your attention and draws your attention. That's being in maya, in delusion. The conceptual world, even though that conceptual world refers to real things. As a meditator, you're knowing the difference between wakefulness and being drawn in or lost in a story, including important meditation objects. If you meditate on the breath, there are times when you can just get so drawn into it, and the breath goes in, goes out, it becomes like the ocean, and then the entire universe is breathing in and out, and then the bell goes after an hour and you say, I was really meditating, but you've got drawn into it. You've also again lost that self-awareness. You was drawn into your meditation object. This we call concentration on an object. So the Buddha was saying that we have to withdraw the mind from lodging into any object of attention. So the way that it was described in the original suttas one of the descriptions, very famous sutta, Bahya, one of my favorite suttas, very short, very sharp. All the Buddha's teachings were short and sharp in the original text. They got longer as it became Mahayana. So the Lotus Sutra, I don't know if you've read that, but it's like 400 pages. Very long stuff. Bahya Sutta was the one man, he heard about the Buddha, heard about enlightenment, and he travelled to where the Buddha was staying. And said, where is he? I want to know about this enlightenment. And the monk said to him, it's not the right time, he's on the alms round. Now, if you know monks, you do not disturb us at meal times. We eat once a day, and that's our sacred space and time. And if you want any decent conversation out of us, do not come at meal time. So Bahya goes to see the Buddha while he's walking on the alms round. And he sees the Buddha, he says, please teach me Dhamma. The Buddha says, now is not the right time. He says, no, I might die, you might die, please teach me Dhamma. It's not the right time. He said, but we never know when the end will come, please teach me Dhamma. The Buddha said, it's not the right time. He said, no, you have to teach me the Dhamma right now. Now in the sutta then the Buddha gives a beautiful short sermon which I'll tell you, but I always think in my mind the Buddha was like rolling his eyes going, oh, for God's sake. So in the sutta the Buddha turns to him and says, in the seen there is only the seen, in the known, in the heard there is only the heard, in the recognized there is only the recognized, in the cognized there is only the cognized. Practice in this way to the exclusion of all else, and you will know enlightenment. So Bahya went and did this, and very quickly became enlightened off this one teaching. And according to the sutta, very shortly after that, got killed by a mad cow. Don't ask me to explain. So he was right when he'd gone to the Buddha. He knows when you're going to die. It turns out the Bahya was right, the Buddha wasn't right. These four words in what is seen, heard, known and cognized, the four words were ditte, which means literally to see, sutte, which means to hear or to learn, mutte, same origin as our word to mentate or mentality, so to know with the mind or conceive would be a good translation, and vinyate, which means to cognize. Buddha would use, again, he would use multiple words to mean one thing. Doesn't mean that you have to know each of these four things separately. What it means is, whatever that thing is that's coming to your attention right now, that's all that's real. If you get drawn into it, you're in the conceptual world with multiple realities and layers, and psychologies, and societies and governments and visas. I'm a little bitter about that visa process thing. That's Maya, delusion. It says whatever that one thing is that you're looking at right now, that's what's real. It's rather like, he described it as a monkey swinging through the forest, grabbing one branch and another branch and another branch. I think of it like, some people, you might not be old enough, but the old days you had slide projectors, and you take photos and then you have them made up into these little cardboard slides, and you stack them into a projector, and the projector will shine them on the wall. This was the days when you only had black and white TV and it was only this big. So a projector was like magic, you know, it's like the cinema in your house. And the slide would come on and you have this click and it goes boom, and then the picture appears. And then you have a clicker and the next slide appears on the screen. You haven't seen this. They actually do this. They do this in The Spy Who Loved Me, James Bond. They have a slide projector. You're going to forget that I said that, but in 5 years or 10 years, you're going to be watching The Spy Who Loved Me, James Bond, and you're like, that's the slide projector. So the slide projector is taking one thing at a time, bringing it onto the projector and shining it. This is exactly how consciousness works. Attention will go to one thing, will land on that one thing and bring it up into conscious awareness, one thing at a time. Now note, that one thing may incorporate many things. So if you want to explore this idea, this is Gestalt perception. It's one of the schools of psychology, not a school of therapy, but a school of cognitive science. So my example, the Buddha statue. If you look at a Buddha statue, is this one thing or many things? It's one statue, right? But then again, it's two arms and two eyes and two nostrils. It's a head and a body. So is it many things put together, or is it one thing? Plus, it's not just a physical thing. When you look at the Buddha statue, you know also whether you like it or dislike it. You also know what it represents and what it means to you personally. It can mean different things to different people. If you studied art, you may note what kind of statue it is. This statue, by the way, has only one strand of robes here. That's because not lignite, there's a rock that they would make it out of. Does anyone know the word? What's that word? It's a porous rock, and it comes out as clay when you dig it out of the ground, and then it hardens. What's the word? Laterite. Laterite. Something like that. So they would dig it out of the ground and it would be fairly malleable like clay, but then it would rapidly harden. But it hardens porous, so you can't put details into the statue because it gets very brittle and very porous. So the robe here is just a thin strand. You see, I know this. And when I look at the statue, I know, oh, that's where this little narrow strand of robe comes from. If you were making it out of good material, you would put folds in of robes in the Gandhara style of Buddha images. It's a whole other story. I've gotten down a little rabbit hole to stop myself. So the point is, when you look at the Buddha image here, is it one thing or many things? The Buddha said, nothing physical can arise without the mental side to it, and no mental thing can arise without the physical side to it. So there is no physical and mental. There is only something that you are cognizing at this moment, and that's the only thing that's real. In psychology, we call it a gestalt, or means it's a pattern that emerges out of putting together pieces. The classic example is a chair. Is a chair one thing, or is it four legs, a base, and a back? Your mind makes a single object out of it. Lands on that object. I like chairs, I dislike them. I want one, I don't want one. It's a good chair, it's a bad chair. You can get drawn into chairs, believe it or not. In the other centre that we used, I had to buy 72 chairs. Some people here remember a lot of people contributed money. I got very into chairs. I know how they're welded and whether they're welded at the side or the back. Are they stackable, plastic and non-plastic? And I thought I knew everything about chairs, and we finally settled on this one particular chair, 750 baht each, metal legs. But one thing I hadn't accounted for, the chairs actually have holes in, right, to allow the bum to breathe, I guess, through the chair. But in Thailand, a lot of people wear shorts, you see. And if you sit on one of those chairs for very long, and then you stand up, you have what I found out, the technical term is called waffle butt. I learned all about chairs. Now when I look at a chair, I've got this whole set of stories. Right? That's Maya, delusion. A chair comes into my attention goes into it, I think about the signs and features of it, I get caught in the story, The Buddha said, consciousness is now stationed at that object. It means I'm going to start maneuvering all the concepts around about chairs until something else occurs. So the one thing that arises at a time includes the mental side, what you recognize. It's called sanya, or perception. It includes liking and disliking, which is called vedana. It includes cognizing it, or making this an object, which is vijnana. It includes the physical form of it, and it includes the mental states associated with it, primarily intentionality, what you're going to do. If you're a Buddhist, you're going to bow to the Buddha image. If you're Taliban, you're going to blow it up from the mountainside, even though it's been there for 2,000 years. Different perception, right? Different mentality. So with every object that arises, you have to have both a physical side and a mental side, and these all get squished together and made into one object. Chair or Golden Gate Bridge, these are my usual examples. Even something utterly abstract, one of the most abstract things that I can think of is democracy. It seems to mean different things in different countries. But it's not a thing you can't put your hand on. So where's the physical form of it? Well, the word democracy is needed to hold that concept in mind. Possibly you could have the Statue of Liberty or some similar emblem, but you have to have a physical emblem or side in order to get that concept into your conscious attention. So the Buddha said, everything that comes into your attention, that's all it is. It's just seen, known, cognized, recognized. So what happens if you do not pay attention to the signs and features of each thing as it comes into your attention, each slide as it slots through the projector? What happens then? At some point, your attention will become smooth. Become smooth because consciousness has the feeling of going out to an object. The Thai monks always describe this, the Thai masters. Even if it's a thought or a memory, your mind goes out to that memory. This is just the way that especially Thai Buddhism will talk about it. You have that feeling of attention going out like a spotlight continuously. This memory, this feeling, this sound, this person, this lunch. There becomes that moment where the mind stops going out to anything. Some of the characteristics of when this starts to happen. Attention will gather. Consciousness has a gathering. You feel it kind of reassembling itself. You'll feel your body kind of twitching, like, oh, yeah. You feel that literal awakening, not a metaphorical awakening, but literally, like, sharpening of attention. This is the beginning of the mystic path. You're moving out of Maya, out of the worlds of concepts, and moving into the world of direct mystic experience. This is really important because so much of meditation, the meditation teachers that you will find around the world, 99% of the time they're giving you objects to focus on. Focus on the breath at the nose, focus on the breath at the rising and falling of the abdomen, focus on a color, focus on fire, focus on light, focus on loving kindness. And all they're doing is switching one slide for another slide in their slide projector of consciousness, going through, and this is the right slide, boom. But you're still just looking at slides, right? So meditation objects are still just putting attention onto something. There comes this moment where the mind stops going out to anything. Remember, as I told you at the beginning, the Buddha said, this generation is too caught in worldly desires to understand the amitta, namely the stilling of all sankhara. Remember, sankhara is the movement, action of body, speech or mind. So at this moment, body, speech and mind has stopped acting. But you don't fall asleep, you don't lose consciousness. Consciousness starts to regather, becomes brighter, stronger and vivid. You're stepping out of Maya and into the actual mystic path that mystics all around the world in every tradition have spoken about and taught about. At this point, trust me, because no one told me this when I was practicing, drop whatever meditation you are doing. You no longer need it. You move into this new experience. Even if it feels vague or not special, this is really important. Nobody told me this. I had masters and teachers who were very highly attained, all these psychic powers and insights, and they're up here, and they don't really know what your problems are. They say things like, well, just do it. And then you say, well, just do what? And they're like, well, it. Because they can't explain what it is that they're doing. And I have a lot of teachers who are good at pseudo-psychology, who talk about letting go of anger, develop loving kindness, have precepts, and giving and patience, all great qualities, good Dhamma, but it's not connected with this movement out of Maya into the mystic experience. Now I can tell almost instantly when I listen to teachers. I know if they're talking about this or not. The consciousness gathers. The Buddha used three words here: gathers, unifies, and brightens. Becomes bright, wieldy, ready for work. It gathers together. Ekabhava means single-minded. Single-minded. Not single-minded concentration on an object, but just the consciousness itself unified. You have that feeling of unification. What I'm talking about is not necessarily this grand mystic experience. One of the qualities of this experience should feel familiar, even if you've never seen it before. It has a feeling of familiarity. The reason is because it's the actual you. This is what your citta is before it went out and started doing things. So there's a feeling of familiarity. There's also a feeling of utter release. Utter release. And because you're released from all these objects of consciousness, there's a feeling of power. There's a gathering of power. You don't know what to do with the power. I've tried like zapping people and then I phone them up. Did you feel anything? You use it for healing with some strange effects on other people. But the feeling of empowerment, even if you don't know what to do with that power. As it tightens, you move into these experiences. One of the things, the body will feel pleasant. Now, if you have an aching or hurting body and you move attention to that aching or hurt, that aching and pain is still there. It doesn't eliminate the pain, but it eliminates your awareness of it. And you feel the body as pleasant as consciousness becomes suffused through the body. You're just awake and knowing. Another characteristic word is non-forgetting. It's one of the definitions of mindfulness, not forgetting, recollection. You can move into that experience. The Buddha said, these pleasant experiences that arise, you can indulge because they are not based on sense pleasure. So pleasant sensation for ordinary people means you've got a good piece of bread, you've got marmite, you've got aniseed balls, you've got someone nice to talk to, you get that final thump as the immigration officer stamps your visa, one more year. These are all pleasant sensations because of sense desire, something that you can see and experience. The pleasantness that arises when the mind stops going out to any object, this is not sense desire pleasure. The Buddha said, if you want to look it up, to a man called Markandeya in the Markandeya Sutta, You can look it up if you wish. And he said that is a pleasure which is superior to all others because it's not sense-based pleasure. So that pleasant sensation through the body, not bright, powerful and blissful. Again, this will be experienced as something familiar. As it tightens, it becomes into piti. This is called second jhana, piti, rapture, and it comes through the body, through the center of the body. And you can feel it becoming very beautiful. Like the consciousness itself feels right. There's a trick to consciousness. Firstly, in Buddhism, consciousness means cognizing an object. So we don't usually use that word. But citta, another word for it, is by itself beautiful, pleasant, and totally fulfilling. You don't need to add anything to it. Any other pleasant experience that you get, you have to keep bringing your attention onto it. Even when I eat my aniseed balls, within a few minutes I'm going to be thinking about something else, right? Consciousness, or citta by itself, is beautiful, it's pleasant, and it's totally satisfying. So much so that you can stop your meditation, you're just like, I've done it. Of course you haven't, but you can think that way. So these are some of the signposts to pay attention to, and I want to bring them up and clarify it because a lot of people actually have these experiences, but because nobody has talked about it, they don't know that this was the right experience. And meditation teachers will tell you, well, if you have piti, you just note and come back to a meditation object, and they're wrong. So I'm bringing these things up as signposts and guides for you, so as these things start to appear, is that the thing? And you know which direction then to go in. That's what was never given to me in all these years practicing as a monk. I had to find my way randomly. Then I meet lots of people who do have these various insights and experiences, often by chance. If nobody's mentioned it to them, they don't know what they're doing, and they don't know that this is the right direction or wrong direction. I'm going to stop there. And leave those thoughts with you. Inside. So everything gets turned into opposites when you bring it inside. Normally, to say the word knowing means that you think about something. So I know about the weight characteristics of a World War II Spitfire. I know why the wing is at the front and not the back. That's a knowledge that I have. A weird piece of knowledge, useless piece of knowledge, but I know it. What we mean by knowing is it's a specific knowledge rather than a general knowledge. So that's when the Buddha would use knowing as opposed to Dhamma, which is understanding. So yes, but there are certain things that become known. For example, you know the purified consciousness directly by touching it. This is not a theory. This is not a meditation practice. This is the stuff that arises after you've been doing your meditation. And don't count yourself out. Don't think that you need 30 years as a monk to start this. It's actually right there. I met this one woman in Canada, and as soon as I mentioned this, she was like, this. And it turns out she'd been doing jhana practices, concentration practices, but object-based, for a long while, but the teacher that she was with there, who was there before me, it was very specific. You do not do any concentration practices. You must note the rising and the falling of the abdomen, not the nose, not through the body, not any other thing. It has to be exactly this way. So I told her, you can drop the object, and she snaps into this fifth jhana called infinite consciousness. So these things are known rather than understood or theorized. That's what we mean by knowing. It's directly knowing, but not, of course, thinking about. To know the weight characteristics of a Spitfire, you have to think about it, imagine it. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just speak loudly. And this is way off to the side. I've never been able to find somebody to answer this question. I'm confused about the English words and how they actually work here. Of making merit.
Okay.
You know, it's like, are you trying to buy your way in, or is there an exchange of like giving you a basket of food and then there's an expectation? So can you explain a little bit about making merit?
Yeah. If you give monks aniseed balls, you get karma credits. That's how it works. So you've got a big load of karma credits today. The word for merit, within Buddhism there was different words used different ways. So you have good and evil. Bapa, bapa and punya. So bapa in Thai, bab, means evil or wrong or universally understood or known as wrongness. And it has the quality of darkening consciousness. Punya is that universally unjudged thing that is good and has the quality of brightening. So punya actually means to brighten. The Buddha used other words though. He used skillful and unskillful. So he would more often talk about skillful and unskillful or wholesome and unwholesome. Wholesome is what can take you towards purification of mind, consciousness, visuddhimagga, path of purification. And unskillful is that which takes you away from the purification of consciousness. A good example is watching TV. That is not bapa, it's not evil, it's not bad. But it's not going to take you to enlightenment. Unless you're watching my YouTube channel then. So the words were used in different ways like this. So watching TV is not bapa, but it's unskillful, it doesn't take you to enlightenment. But it's not evil or wrong. So punya and bapa means specifically to darken consciousness, no matter what your opinion is or what your intentions were. So if I kill someone, even if I think that's justified or right, it's universally judged to be wrong, and that's going to darken my consciousness. Right? Other things, skillful and unskillful, can depend on your judgment. There's always that question somebody asked, that if a crocodile grabs a baby, do you kill the crocodile and save the baby? But then you're starving, the crocodile doesn't get its food, and you're supposed to look out for the baby or the crocodile, and start introducing all kinds of crazy concepts, which are totally irrelevant, because I've never seen a crocodile or a baby, or a crocodile eating a baby. You can get caught up into this maya, this conceptual universe, and then things become complicated. Right? So the practice that we do is forget the conceptual universe, come back to this one thing, one thing, one thing. Practicing of good qualities will brighten consciousness. If you're not well behaved or well controlled, your ability to settle down and to bring the mind back into this mystic path will be very difficult to do, because the bapa or unwholesome action has the characteristic that it shakes the mind, makes the mind unstable. Good things to do have the characteristic that they make your mind more stable. So in order to concentrate, you have to have that stability of mind. You have to have a certain level of punya, brightness. But that's the translation of merit. Of course, merit isn't a great translation for it. Sounds like when you were at school and you get merit points. Right. Communist government of China gives out social, credit score. Anybody else? At the front? The microphone helps if anyone's watching on YouTube, then they can hear the question. Okay. Right. It's pretty good to cry with loving kindness meditation. I mean, people cry when England loses the World Cup to Germany. So if this is what moves you, then that's a great thing. Piti, she said piti, we translate as rapture, but it's not rapture of the mind. So when you win the World Cup, that's a rapture of the mind, or you get something you like or want. Actually rises through the body and becomes a tightening of consciousness, that consciousness no longer wants to go out to anything, it just wants to stay here. If this happens, forget your meditation object. Even if it's metta, you can drop that and you just go into the piti, and you can feel what strengthens it and you can feel what weakens it. The only caveat to that is, as it strengthens, the next stage from piti is the sukha, the happiness that arises. So if that happens, happiness is of the mind, not of the body. So then you drop the piti and you go into the happiness, the sukha. But this is sukha not based on sense pleasures. It's not because you've got something good to eat or a nice film to watch or something. So you can use the piti, the rapture, as your guide. Drop then your meditation objects, use this as your guide to purification. Yes and no. I mean, it's not clear. I like what Ajahn Chah said about this. They said, how do you know if you're in second jhana or third jhana? He said, "Mai lu mai ni pai," which means there are no signposts, there's no road signs. So, yeah, you feel your way through it. But follow that purification of mind, and the purification gets more and more stark, or more and more simple, and less based on... For the metta, you need to have ideas in the mind. You need to conjure it up. You need to work to keep it moving. You can drop that and go more and more into the still, refined states. And trust me, those will have more of a universal effect than the metta. The more the mind is purified, the more effect that will have for you and for the world around you. So don't be afraid to drop the triggers, go into that purification. Even it becomes more and more empty, less and less characteristics. There's nothing with which you can define it anymore. Yeah. Okay, we for time. I'll still be here for a short while if anybody has questions.
I just speak to you. Let me thank you, Phra Pandit. After so many years of being in your audience, I can't believe that you would ever going to actually. I'm sure Germany lost the VR game. So, but in the next couple of months, he will not be.
You just got that wrong.
I got that wrong.
You got that wrong.
Germany's loss is our game.
No, you mean Bangkok's loss is Germany's game.
Well, yeah, exactly. But they're going to lose. I decided to come back.
Ah, okay.
Rhetoric is rhetoric.
Okay.
Okay, anyway, so when he's not here, we have managed to figure out or recruit people, Andy and Joe being one of them, and then Robin and some other people being others. So over the next, between January and February, we're solid. Solid. After that, no. Done. So we could sort of rely on something happening for the next 6 weeks.
So Monday evenings there will be
Monday
something here.
Same place, same station. Okay. So, to get back to it, we've got a few other things we should talk about. One is the donations. This is the last time, maybe for some time, we won't be getting. One will be going to the speaker, the other will be going to Bonnery because they cover the cost of all the electricity, etc. And two, can you help us sort of clean up the room by moving the brown chairs into here and the white chairs into the other area, and there's only 6 white chairs that are going to stay. Okay? Okay, and the final message is I sometimes point to Joe and say, he's the coffee guy. If he wants to say anything about coffee, he will. If he says, no, I'm going to go home, then we're all a little fun.
So let me finish with the lesson. Sabhitiyo avivajantu samharogo avinasatu mate bhavattvantarayo sukhi digayuko abhava abhivadanasi lisanichang buddha pachayino chattaro Dhamma vadanti ayuvano sukhang balang. So I may see you a little once in February actually. I may still be here, but otherwise be July when I see you next.